And another good morning from Milwaukee rather than Lake Wissota, where this is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow, and it's nice to have you along for folks who are either watching live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, or folks who are looking at this later on for a video playback. Nice to have you here. Last day on the road before heading back to Chippewa Falls. We're going to have a fairly busy day here, what with the former president of the United States finally being charged criminally with his actions to overturn an American election. So we're going to ask the question, can we finally call a coup a coup? Also, we'll do pomp, circumstance, and crybabies as we talk about Janet Protasiewicz and the ceremonial swearing in, making her a new Supreme Court justice, and the claimed victimization of somebody on the losing side of that election who's going to be losing their job, as happens a lot in politics. But back to the ceremony and the celebration of Justice Protasiewicz, we will talk to State Representative Jody Emerson, who was there at the state capitol as well. So much more to get to. We'll get to that Derek Van Orden incident again, because there might be video, and Congressman Mark Pocan is wanting to get that released. So we'll have that and some new faces that we're going to have to learn from the Brewers because of the trade deadline, and of course more about the Trump indictment as well. So anyway, that all gets started 4 minutes from now. The radio show starts at 6:06, right after news and commercials across the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you soon. Yeah, that's totally fine with Sawyer Brown. I'm happy with that.
Sounds good.
Kind of totally forgotten about that. I knew he was out there.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. Welcome to the state of Wisconsin Sense from the shores of Lake Michigan for one more day where we've traded in our Lake Wissota studio for downtown Milwaukee, doing a little traveling for Up North News on this Wednesday, August 2nd. It is nice to have you along today. Aaron Zomer standing by in Madison as well, and hopefully back from our home base tomorrow. So if we've got a couple of glitches in the connection here, I hope you will excuse that and understand that we should be on the right side of technology tomorrow when we're back in our usual situation. Up on Lake Wissota, it is 67 degrees on this Wednesday morning. 69 here in Milwaukee, 64 in Waukesha, 66 up in Amory, folks listening on Lake Air. And La Crosse, it's 71, Hayward, 61. And in Green Bay, rather, it is 64 degrees. Here's what's on tap this morning. Can we finally call a coup a coup? The 45th president of the United States is now criminally charged with trying to undermine the 2020 election. And yet the news was greeted by many with kind of a yawn because it's the third major indictment, but it is far and away the most serious. It gets to the heart of American democracy. And at what point do you go from, carping about losing an election to interference and to criminal activity to overturn not just the will of the voters, but the trust the voters have in American democracy? So we'll talk about that this hour. Also, our weekly climate check report covers what homeowners need to know to get the most out of converting to solar energy that can power your houses and put more electricity back on the grid. Of course, there's a new state Supreme Court justice, so we'll talk about pomp and circumstance and crybabies. The pomp and circumstance we'll talk about with State Representative Jody Emerson, who was at the investiture ceremony in the Capitol yesterday for new Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz. The crybaby is the director of the Wisconsin court system, a former conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, a Republican appointee, who's going to lose his job with a new progressive majority. That shouldn't be news, but his squawking and crying about it to try to make himself a victim is making it a headline, and we'll try to address that, well, with the simple words, elections have consequences, because, aren't conservatives the ones who say they're against entitlements? But apparently, unless you're entitled to a position like Fred Pren, but we'll review the happier points of the day with Representative Emerson. We will talk to Todd Alba as well before things get wrapped up. Along the way, you can always reach us on the studio line, 844-967-2789. And our email address is radio@upnorthnewswi.com. Mr. Zomers, as you were coming into work, did you catch that big giant supermoon as it was making its way toward the western horizon?
That I did not, unfortunately.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't catch it coming up because from where I am downtown, it was obstructed. But boy, when I woke up this morning, it was just huge, yellow, beautiful, and making its way downward. And obviously, it'll be the same tonight and tomorrow, just not at the peak of fullness like it was tonight. But yeah, just gorgeous and nice temperatures. This has been a nice August week so far in Wisconsin.
I definitely have to agree.
And that's the thing we have to say. It's August. We didn't really dwell on that enough now. And you get people going, oh, summer's almost over. It's like, hold on. We've got all of August. We're going to get there. We've got plenty of time to enjoy things. You've got the Wisconsin State Fair, hasn't even started yet. I think that gets underway tomorrow. So plenty more activities for people to enjoy. I know this weekend, after 6 days on the road here, I'm looking forward to a quieter weekend. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. It's only the middle of the week, but are you making plans as well? You've been doing some road work to Manitowoc a couple of times. So where are you launching August socially?
Well, this weekend I will be going back to Manitowoc again, because the church that I used to go to with my family just got remodeled. So they're doing kind of an open house, and I'm going to go and play some music there.
Oh, very nice. What are you going to play? What do
I'm gonna
you
play
play?
drums.
You're going to play drums as part of the music. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So yeah, I want to encourage people to embrace the, the positive side. Summer's not almost over. There's plenty of things to do. Go outside and play. It's nice out there. Among the stories that you'll find on Up North News over on our website, upnorthnewswi.com, you know that on Fridays, we tend to talk to national political correspondent Kia Vakil. And he, of course, has a wrap up story on the website about the indictment against former President Trump, including the part where Trump compared his plight to the persecution of Jews in Nazi Germany, because of course he did. So look for Kia's story on our website. If you go to social media posts, just look for Up North News WI. And for example, we have a new video explainer on minimum wage increases in other states, not Wisconsin, of course, where we've had the same Republican control of the legislature for a dozen years now. But raising that minimum wage is good for a state's economy. And in our newsletter that came out at early this morning, again, that you can sign up for at the website, some of the new foods that you'll be able to find and some of the award-winning foods that you'll be able to find at the Wisconsin State Fair. So we've hinted at some of the day's headlines. We'll talk more about that in our next segment, and then get our climate check, today's history lesson, and a little music break as well. So much to cover on this first hour of Up North News Radio for a Wednesday. We'll be right back.
Sorry, that was the wrong music, but
That's okay. All right, good.
It took me by surprise, I must say, when I found out yesterday. Don't you know that I heard it through the grapevine? God much longer want to be mine.
We'll tell you in today's history lesson and music break why we're playing Gladys Knight and the Pips, with the emphasis on the Pips. And they're heard it through the grapevine gets us into the Trump indictment that we'll get to in just a moment. First off, a reminder, Up North News is a separate entity from the Civic Media Radio Network, but we are so happy to partner with them. And so with that said, I would like to do my Civic Media friends a favor and read off a promo that they're sharing on all of their other shows as well, about sponsoring play-by-play of the Green Bay Packers, because the Packers are going to be heard on Civic Media's WRJN in Racine and Kenosha. They'll have every game all season long. And so you have a small business, you could be in the huddle and on the line of scrimmage by signing up to be a part of the Packer broadcasts. The Civic Media marketing team is ready to get you signed up with Packer games or Badger games or local high school sports. You can make an appointment to talk to a Civic Media team member about this opportunity at 608 819 8255. That's 608 819 8255. Do hurry. Appointments are filling fast. A few sponsorships remain. This isn't an unlimited offer. So give Civic Media a call at 608 819 8255. In other sports, and of course, I mean baseball, the Brewers are still in the nation's capital playing the Washington Nationals. Bryce Terang and Joey Wiemer hit consecutive two-run singles as part of a four-run fourth inning, and the Milwaukee Brewers defeated the Nats 6-4 last night, and that snapped a four-game losing streak by the Brewers. Wade Miley is on the mound this afternoon for the deciding game of the series, then a quick trip home to start a series tomorrow evening against the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Brewers now just a half game behind Cincinnati in the National League Central. Plenty of activity ahead of last evening's trade deadline. The Brewers added first baseman Carlos Santana from Pittsburgh, outfielder Mark Hanna from the New York Mets, and left-handed reliever Andrew Chafin from Arizona. And the Brewers parted ways with right-handed pitcher Peter Strzelecki and infielder Luis Urias. We are going to be giving away Brewer tickets. We're going to do that tomorrow, and that will be for Saturday's Brewers game against the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's a Saturday evening game. We'll give away the tickets tomorrow, Thursday morning, and we're going to do 4 tickets at once because I figure it's a Saturday game, and I'm sure you can find 3 friends that would like to go with you and make a great Saturday night of it at American Family Field. So be listening for that tomorrow. But again, for any of the Brewers action, you can tune into Oshkosh Air Support, 98.3 FM, 1100 AM, or News from the Center and Richland Center, 107.7 FM and 1450 AM. And before I get the transition into headlines, it is quite clear that somebody is still recovering. Aaron, we talked about this earlier about, how you, in the late stages of an illness, you are finally feeling better. You don't sound better yet. So I actually feel a lot better. And my apologies. I don't quite sound quite there yet, but we're getting there.
You still sound like you're feeling better. Like you can tell that your
a little more
your mind,
upbeat. Yeah.
your body out besides your nose and throat are ready to go.
Yeah. Yesterday, still in a bit of a fog here, but we're carrying on through the headlines. So again, just wanted to beg your pardon on that, but appreciate you being here as we go through some of the headlines. We'll talk a little bit later, like I said, about Janet Protasiewicz taking on the new role of justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And we'll talk to Representative Jody Emerson in our next hour. But we're going to start here with asking if we can finally call a coup what it is. It's a coup. And now, again, that's not the official word in the criminal indictment. But you know what? Let's let Jack Smith, the special counsel who was looking into things, explain what it is that's new today.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding.
It's a 4-count indictment after an exhaustive federal investigation about Trump's actions. It is the natural extension of what all of America heard from the January 6th Special Congressional Committee. It's not directly tied to it. Counsel Smith did his own investigation, but that is to say, we know a lot of what was out there. And it's now time to take those actions, tie them to federal statutes, and let a grand jury determine if they rise to the level of criminal charges. And the grand jury of fellow Americans said yes, they rise to that level. And so tomorrow, Donald Trump will appear in a courtroom again for the 3rd time to be charged with crimes. He has been charged earlier with crimes related to falsifying records over hush money payments. He has been charged with essentially taking classified secret government information and handling it sloppily where anybody could have gotten access to it at Mar-a-Lago. But now this is the big one. And I kind of worry it. On the one hand, people said, well, we're just kind of setting the stage with each federal indictment, gets a bit more serious. I almost think it should have gone the other way around, in part because this has taken a very long time to investigate what was obvious, as early as late 2020, early 2021, that if this had been the first criminal indictment against Donald Trump, people would be perhaps making a bigger deal out of it because it is a bigger deal than the first one, which again related to hush money payments to Stormy Daniels as he tried to cover up an extramarital affair. So there are folks who are looking at this going, yeah, we've heard all this already, and Trump supporters across the Republican Party, not all Republicans, I hasten to add, but Trump supporters have been trying to spin everything from lies to diversions, like, oh wait, Hunter Biden, or whatever it takes to get the attention off the very serious matter of trying to rig an election. And that is what Trump tried to do. He made the plans well before Election Day that if he lost, he was going to do certain things. And the slate of Wisconsin electors, the fake electors that his campaign set up in Wisconsin and in other states, is central to this indictment, showing that there was an actual plot, a conspiracy to defraud the voters. Even if not a single vote was changed, and thankfully it wasn't through Trump's actions. Some people might say, well, then what are we doing? He didn't actually, do anything. Well, this is essentially the attempted bank robbery. Didn't get away with $1, thank God, but still a criminal conspiracy that would have caused tremendous harm to the bank or to Americans' faith in democracy. And again, think of the chaos that would have ensued if not for just a handful of people. If Mike Pence had gone along with the plan and accepted the fraudulent ballot that was sitting in Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson's office. Or what if Jill Karofsky had not won that Wisconsin Supreme Court election earlier that year, and there'd been one more conservative justice on the court, on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, that might have ruled in Donald Trump's favor of saying, yeah, let's re-examine the Wisconsin vote total, even though there was no evidence to support it. But there were still justices sitting on our state Supreme Court now who voted to consider putting the brakes on Wisconsin's election process and examining for something that didn't exist and that they didn't have proof that it existed. Again, just a few key people, and many of the key people who stood between Donald Trump and the chaos our country would have faced in January of 2021, they weren't Democrats. They weren't liberals. They weren't the media. They were people on his own staff. They were legal advisors. They were family members who all said to him, you lost. There's no evidence here. We've lost like 32 court cases. It's time to prepare for the transition. And instead, Trump continued to push, as heard, for example, in that infamous phone call with the Georgia Secretary of State, where he says, fellas, give me a break. I just need you to find, so many more votes, one more than I have, because I won the election. He didn't win the election. He continued to spread that lie because that was the only way that he could move forward. So this is not a case of First Amendment rights being violated. Donald Trump and any losing candidate can say anything they want about, well, I think it must have been rigged. Hey, you can say that. This is about the actions that you took beyond exercising your First Amendment rights. This isn't spin. This isn't just skepticism about the results. This isn't cynicism. This isn't suspicion. This is about not acting in good faith when you lost an election and trying to overcome the checks and balances built into our system, especially the voters. We are the ultimate set of checks and balances. And if you're trying to change the numbers on the scoreboard from what the actual votes were by fellow Americans, there should be a penalty paid. Now, it'll be up to a court from here, but for anybody disputing that these charges were filed yesterday, I would simply ask you to again go back through the records, go back through the actual actions, and see everything that Donald Trump did, not what he said, but what he and his co-conspirators did, and tell me that that isn't a direct assault on democracy for which there should be consequences. Got time for one other story here, and that is a letter. It's just a letter. It's a letter sent by Congressman Mark Pocan, and it was sent to Congressman Brian Stile, also from Wisconsin, who chairs the House Committee on Administration. And it has to do with a fellow Wisconsin congressman, Derek Van Orden. And the letter from Congressman Pocan says to Congressman Stile, as chair of the House Committee on Administration, you have jurisdiction over matters of Capitol security. Therefore, I call on you to immediately release the security footage from inside the Capitol Rotunda on the evening of July 26th and the early morning hours of July 27th. It is critical that members of the public, including Derek Van Orden's constituents, know the truth of what happened that evening. As you know, you have already provided security footage to members of the public. In fact, in February of this year, you provided 44,000 hours of Capitol surveillance footage from January 6th to Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Representative Van Orden's constituents deserve to know the truth about the man elected to serve them in his profane tirade against Senate pages in the rotunda a few nights back. And so, in the name of transparency into this election, I call on you to release the security tapes. To which I'm sure a lot of people said, Lordy, there are tapes. So we'll be watching for that to see if Congressman Pocan's request is granted. Coming up next, we'll talk to Melissa Baldoff in our weekly climate check and talk about the power of solar energy. We'll be back.
Yeah, hopefully it gets released.
That would be so great. And now we are back with our weekly climate check. Melissa Baldoff joins us now to learn about a new organization. Well, the organization's not new. I'm learning for the first time more about Renew Wisconsin and the work it does to help improve the climate through having more people embrace renewable energy sources and take on other tasks that can be nothing but good for the climate. Melissa, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here. And I'm so excited that our friends at Renew Wisconsin are able to join us this morning. We've got their executive director, Sam Deniski, with us this morning. I've worked with Renew a number of times over the years. They've always been strong partners to the governor's office and, every effort I've been a part of to promote clean energy and the transition to clean energy in Wisconsin and really bolster our clean energy economy. So I'm really excited that Sam is here with us this morning to talk a little bit about some of their work.
Yeah, Sam, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. And Melissa, thank you very much for that warm welcome. We, Pat, it's okay if you haven't heard of us before. A lot of folks haven't, but, as clean energy moves more and more into the limelight, more people are definitely going to hear about Renew and all of the really great work that my staff is doing to promote renewable energy in our state.
So you're a nonprofit organization, but basically, would you call yourself an advocate and a resource for people? Are you engaged more with like consumers or more with politicians and policy writers?
All of the above. Our mission
Okay.
is to lead and accelerate Wisconsin's transformation to a renewable energy future through three avenues: through advocacy, education, and collaboration. We think all of those things are equally important. So yes, we do a lot of advocacy, policy advocacy. So a lot of that happens at the Public Service Commission. More and more now is happening at the Capitol as well. Education, we try to do our best to teach people about renewable energy and renewable energy policies to the general public, because these renewable energy is almost equal parts now policy and technology. So it's really important that people understand how they work together. And then collaboration also very, very important to us. We think that renewable energy and clean energy technologies are beneficial to nearly every Wisconsinite, and we just need to make sure that everybody understands how these technologies, how renewable energy can work for them. And once I think more people understand how it works for them, we just add more folks to our loosely defined coalition, if you will.
And then teeing up Melissa for the next couple of questions here. She and I worked quite a bit on the policy side of things, and between the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, Melissa, there's no shortage of opportunities for both advocates and consumers to learn more about, what kinds of things could benefit them as well as the climate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that's, really important. We've seen between the two pieces of legislation that you talked about, the largest investment in clean energy in a generation. And that is going to benefit businesses, consumers, families, farmers. There's something for everyone in those pieces of legislation, period. And especially when it comes to improving our climate and making, really paving the way for that clean energy transition. And I think one of the things that has gotten a lot of attention and people are excited about is the benefit to help more people afford to transition to solar. There are tax incentives available to help make putting solar panels on a home or a business more affordable. And that's something we've heard a lot about, that people are excited about. They know that it's something they can do to help reduce their costs and, improve the stability of our grid. So I know that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about with Sam, and kind of like one of those pieces, like, you mentioned a little bit too, Pat, that some of these like technology issues, they sound like really wonky and in the weeds, but then when you hear a little bit more, it's like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. So I know one of the policies that Renew has been really engaged in advocacy around is net metering. And it's one of those things that sounds kind of like wonky and like, what is it? But it's really important. And once people hear about it, they're going to be like, oh, that makes so much sense. So Sam, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about net metering and, you know, what it is and why it's a good deal for people in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so net metering is exclusively for folks with their own solar arrays, right? So like a rooftop solar array on your own home. And what that does is quite often your solar array, especially this time of year in Wisconsin, is going to actually produce more energy than what you need when the sun is out. So, you know, right now when folks are at work, the sun is shining, your solar array is producing energy. That energy first, of course, goes to all of the appliances and the lights and the electronics in your home. The excess then goes out onto the grid. It goes down to your neighbor, your neighbor's neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of like water. It kind of flows where it needs to flow. So, but then in the evenings or cloudy days or other times when your solar array isn't producing enough electricity for your home or your building, you can still take that energy in from the grid like we all do normally. And what net metering does is it balances, it actually counts the amount of solar energy your solar array exports or puts onto the grid. And it allows you to bring that same amount of electricity in for the same cost. So what it is, it's a billing policy that enables customers who generate their own electricity from their own solar systems to basically get a 1-for-1 retail bill credit on any of that energy. And that's really good for a lot of things. It makes the cost, the payback of that solar array shorter. It also, you know, it provides a lot of good for the utility. They don't have to produce that electricity. They don't have to maintain that system. They don't even have to buy that system, right? The customer is doing that on their own. So it's not just good for the end user, for the solar owner. It's actually good for the utility, and it's honestly good for the neighborhood and for the grid as a whole.
So in terms of a solar operation, and I'm thinking about this from a rural perspective, because there's, you know, more people that are embracing this, and maybe they have a little space. And, you know, pardon the naive question here about solar, but we all think about, you know, solar panels up on the roofs, but in rural areas, you have a little bit more space. Are we talking that people in some areas, rather than just a few rooftop panels, or actually have their own, I guess what you would call a mini solar farm, so that they can get the benefits of net metering?
Well, each utility has their own net metering policies in Wisconsin, which makes things a little confusing, because if you're, you know, in Alliant Energy territory, your net metering policy looks a little different than it does if you're in We Energy's territory, or Excel, or one of the many co-ops or municipalities that we have here in our state. So mostly we are talking about rooftop solar here. We're talking about privately owned solar, either on a home or a business, or like a nonprofit, like a church or an animal shelter or something like that. There are different, we call them tariffs. They're different, basically just rates for those folks who build those larger solar arrays. Right now in Wisconsin, that's usually the utility. So there's different rates for that electricity, because being able to be bigger, they can take advantage of things like economies of scale and whatnot.
So where does somebody actually begin to learn more about this? And I mean, I could even just use myself. I've got a lot of roof space that faces to the south, like everybody else on my street there. Is the first call to your local utility? Is it to some kind of a private company? Is it to an organization like yours?
That's a really good question. Some people, that, you know, their utility is their trusted advisor. They will call their utility. I think that's a fine option. There's no really one single right way to do this, but in my opinion, the best thing to do would be to call a solar contractor. And we actually have a list, and in fact, a map of those at Renew Wisconsin. Now, these are all current members of Renew Wisconsin, so that it's not necessarily all of these solar installation companies in the state. But if you go to renewwisconsin.org/solar-installers, You can see which solar installation companies operate in your area, and you can hopefully make a better decision there. But yeah, my first suggestion would be to reach out to a solar contractor in your neighborhood, and then they can come and let you know if solar is a viable option for your home or business or not.
And that brings up a really, another great piece to all of this. And, it's something that Pat, you and I have talked about in previous segments. When we talk about the benefit to our local economies and what investing in clean energy and our clean economy and the technology there does for job growth, with so many of these, you know, so much expansion here, there's a lot of opportunity for new jobs. And those jobs in the renewable energy sector pay really well. Many of them don't require a college degree. So that's a really, another benefit here is that boost to our local economies and helping folks get into a job market that is growing all the time. Sam, as I assume that's something you guys have seen in recent years too, is more and more companies kind of coming online and growing and becoming a part of your network as the the economy grows, that clean economy grows.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing from my perspective that I've seen is our member installers. We've grown a few of those in number, but specifically the amount of business that our installer contractors, that our member contractors do have grown. I'm not gonna try to pick anyone out over another one because all of our member contractors are great. But we've really seen, especially a few of them, double, triple, even more grow their business just over the last 5 to 10 years, honestly. And another thing that I always like to point out to people is these types of installations, this type of work, it's not something that can be outsourced, right? We need actual Wisconsinites, we need actual boots on the ground folks installing these systems. We need electricians, master and journeyman electricians to connect these, so it's really good for the trade industry as well. And then of course there's a whole bunch of other jobs that also go along with this that a lot of people don't even think about, whether you're talking about supply chain, maybe you're looking at material scientists or other engineers designing the products, whether you're talking about sales and marketing folks to promote these projects to the general public. There is a wide variety of potential jobs in the economy here that Wisconsin can really take advantage of.
And then finally, I would imagine that for a lot of this discussion has been about the private sector, homes and small businesses and things, but that there are still plenty of opportunities if more public sector entities, read local and state governments, would do more to embrace renewable energy. I sure get the impression there's room for growth there.
Yes, some of our biggest champions have been local governments. We have several cities now across the state that have made renewable energy or climate pledges to decarbonize their city operations, to help decarbonize their communities as well. These local governments also, in a lot of instances, have these sort of privately owned behind the meter, what we call, or net metered solar installations. So they are very concerned about, making sure that net metering stays the way it is and we don't change it going forward.
Sounds great. Well, Sam Doniski is the executive director of Renew Wisconsin. And Sam, it was great to learn so much more about this. Thank you very much, and look forward to another visit soon.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate being able to talk about this.
No, another great guest suggestion for Melissa Baldoff to introduce to us. Melissa, thank you. Looking forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
All right. We also have a press release that came out from XL Energy, coincidentally, yesterday about this topic, saying that they wanted to offer tips to their customers because installing private rooftop or other on-property solar panels is becoming increasingly more popular, and to be aware that anything they're purchasing needs to be compatible with your local utility's electric grid. So I want to underscore that point about being in touch with your utility before taking on a project like that. Melissa Kay from Locally Grown Radio is going to to join us next for today's history lesson and music break right after this. You're Up North. There's Melissa.
Good morning.
Hello. How's it going over there?
Oh, pretty good. It's my first day back. I had 2 days off so far this week.
Oh, hey, for fun?
Yeah, family reunion.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Where was this? Where was the shindig?
Lake Arbutus in Hatfield.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what else is happening out there this week?
Yeah, I'm still trying to play catch up. I don't know.
How many people come to the family reunion?
I didn't count this year, but usually it's between 40 and 60.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of us.
Wow, yes.
And it's a whole camping weekend, so we just camp all weekend and play games, eat food,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
talk smart around the campfire.
Yep. Let's see.
I'm finding his rafter schedules.
Okay. Oh, that break went fast. All right, here we go.
So did my coffee.
Doesn't take much to appreciate what was the number one song this day in 1975 by the Eagles. Part of today's music break and history lesson, we'll bring on Melissa Kay from Locally Grown Radio in just a sec to share some birthdays and more.
One of these nights, one of these crazy old nights.
Let's see, among the birthdays today, actress Mary Louise Parker is 59 years old today. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 was passed by Congress, rendering marijuana and all of its byproducts illegal. Still the case in Wisconsin, where apparently, based on today's history lesson, Republicans like the party like it's 1937. Let's bring in Melissa Kay here from Locally Grown Radio WFHR. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I sound worse than I feel, but that's the way it goes when you recover from these things.
Yes.
When you're around the petri dishes known as grandchildren, God bless them.
Mhm.
And you did a bit of a family reunion yourself, I hear.
Yes, I did. I got to see all of my nieces and nephews and cousins and aunts and uncles. It was the first year without grandma, and that's a little bittersweet, but glad the family all still got together.
And so these are all like direct descendants of your grandma.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't go across like
Mhm.
all these other branches, because we kind of did the same thing this weekend with my wife's parents, and I had to actually, when you met, how many did you say were at your reunion?
I didn't count, but probably around 45.
Okay, so I thought, well, for my in-laws, who are about to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary, we don't call it a family reunion because it's like, oh, it's just us. It's us, the 6 kids and then their kids, and now there's some grandkids. But by the time I added up, by the time Billy and Betty, grandma and grandpa, had their 6 kids and now 5 spouses or partners, and between all of their kids, there are 12 grandkids and 5 great grandkids. That was 30 people. That we
Wow.
had. So I guess it does count as a family reunion, even though we're just like, oh, just come on over. We'll just have a little picnic. It's like, no, this is a big thing,
Yeah, it turns into a big thing, but it's fun to get together with family.
Oh, very much so. Getting back to the festivities today, the number one song from this day in 1980 was from Olivia Newton-John. You, of course, would recognize this from the movie Xanadu. We all know the soundtrack. Almost nobody saw the movie. Now, I played Gladys Knight and the Pips earlier, only to note that this was the birthday of Edward Patton. And nobody would know Edward Patton other than that he was one of the Pips. When Gladys Knight started this, actually, she was just part of a group called the Pips, and they were all siblings and cousins, speaking of family reunions. But then Gladys Knight kind of emerged as the front of the group, and cousin Edward was one of them. Eddie, he went by, and he passed away in 2005, but born this day in 1939. So I just wanted to give some long overdue props to the Pips.
All right.
Props to the Pips. There you go.
Props to the Pips.
On this day in 2010, Arcade Fire released The Suburbs, their third studio album, universally lauded by fans and critics alike. So I picked a song off it because I know as much about Arcade Fire as perhaps, Aaron does about Xanadu. So this is called Ready to Start. Is this the point, Aaron, where you go, how do you not know this song? This is so great.
No, actually, I'm also not that familiar with Arcade Fire, but more so than Xanadu, at least.
There you go. On this day in 1962, Bob Dylan made his name change official, legally saying goodbye to his birth name. Pop quiz there, Melissa. What was Bob Dylan's birth name?
Yeah, I got no guess.
Okay, Robert Zimmerman. This Robert Zimmerman was not going to cut it. But Bob Dylan, that's another matter. It was also on this day in 1969 that he returned to his hometown of Hibbing, Minnesota to attend his 10-year high school reunion. But apparently things got really awkward at the local Moose Lodge. He never quite made it to the reunion itself. And he has apparently never since made another visit to Hibbing, Minnesota. So local boy done good, but no more family reunions there for him.
Sad day.
When you think of the big grossing concert tours out there, I mean, what would come to mind for you as far as, the ones that made the most money when you look at the whole tour?
Rolling Stones?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Yep. I would have thought Taylor Swift because that tour is going on now, and you would,
Yeah.
but I looked because of the note here, and the note is about Ed Sheeran. So we'll play a little Castle on the Hill while I talk about it here. It was on this day in 2019 that Ed Sheeran played in Hanover, Germany on his Divide tour. It was the 246th date of that tour. Imagine a concert tour with 246 dates. That's crazy right then and there. But on this day in 2019, he broke the record that had been set by U2 for the highest grossing tour. He would eventually finish the tour. The tour grossed $775 million.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? And yeah, there's some when you adjust it for inflation. Actually, I think U2 still rivals that. But yeah, there's Rolling Stones on there and some others as well. But I don't know which I'm more impressed by, the 9-digit figure or being on tour for that long. The big one, of course, Elton John just set the new record with his farewell.
That doesn't count. I know it counts officially, but he's been on tour for like 50 years. I know it's 5, but still, he's just, when you make your tour 5 years, of course it's going to be the highest grossing.
Yeah, it's not. You're right.
Good point, Aaron.
But when you're playing with statistics, yeah, there's all kinds of room for interpretation there. But so it goes. I would normally say, hey, what's coming up on locally grown radio? But you're kind of like 6 minutes into your work week here.
Well, I'm playing catch up, but I do know that they're meeting with the Wood County Sheriff's Department today for our midday magazine. So that'll be a good segment all hour long.
Okay, sounds good. And then what I was asking Aaron earlier here, because I'm trying to dispel the notion that summer's over. It's like, no, look, we still have all of August. So I mean, what kinds of things are still on the docket for you?
Actually, I'm really excited. This weekend, I'm going to see a stage testing of a musical that's born here in Wisconsin. It's called Lucette, and it's the story of Paul Bunyan's sweetheart. It was written by Mary Beth Lorbecki up in the Hayward area, or River Falls, actually, is where the show is taking place. So I'm excited to go see that on Saturday.
Nice. I was we're down here in Milwaukee for a little retreat with the entire Up North News team, and we were out to dinner last night. And Selena Heller, our new reporter, who I worked with as a reporter at TV 13, I know that she'd done some theater. She came down to Milwaukee with a friend. Turns out they've done many theater shows together. And this is just my way of saying that for as extroverted as people think anybody is in the public eye, there's some things that other people like would never do. And for me, I've never done theater and I would never have the guts to do it. And I just really applaud people like you and Selena and anybody else who can. Everybody has their strengths. And for me, I'm just way too intimidated. So I'm glad you're still doing it. Glad you're having fun with it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Melissa Kay, thanks so much. You can catch her on locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids. Have a wonderful day.
You too, guys. Thanks.
All right. And when we come back later in our second hour, we'll talk to State Representative Jody Emerson about the investiture of new Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz. We'll be back. You're Up North. There we go. Thank you, ma'am. You're so wonderful.
Thank you.
All right.
Hope you're feeling all right.
I'm a bit, yeah, I sound much worse than I feel. So hopefully we'll have a normal Wednesday next week.
All right. Sounds good.
See you later.
See you guys.
Okay. Have we been less glitchy than yesterday?
Yes. Although, ironically, when you said that, it glitched out.
Okay.
But that was only the second time today it has. Yesterday, it was pretty glitchy mostly the whole time. But today, it was like I said, just twice. And one of them is now during a break. So
Got it. All right. I'll be right back. Okay. There's a lot of inconveniences about living on the road. One of them is that I love a nice hot breakfast early every morning. But this hotel doesn't serve breakfast that early at 5 a.m. So I now sit here and I get hangry so that by 8:01 I'm running downstairs to go get breakfast.
yeah.
I know. Sad trombone. Poor me.
Well, no, I definitely get getting hangry. That's basically everybody in my family gets hangry really bad.
What I've done a good job at, and one of the things the hotel does a good job at, is they have a lot of late night options, pizza and chicken tenders or whatnot. And I have stayed away from that tempting as it is, knowing full well, now with this new early wake up time, the last thing you want is getting up at, 1 a.m. to go take a Pepsid or something like that. But it all looks good.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Thank you, Don. Welcome to the second hour of Up North News Radio for this Wednesday, August 2nd. One more day from downtown Milwaukee, trading Lake Wissota for Lake Michigan on this Wednesday, August 2nd, National Ice Cream Sandwich Day. Coming up this hour, the Wisconsin State Capitol was the scene Tuesday of the formal investiture of a new Supreme Court Justice, Janet Protasiewicz. Nearby, a former conservative Supreme Court candidate was proclaiming himself a victim for being ousted as head of the state court system now that progressives control the high court. We'll get into that topic and more of the happier points of the day later this hour with State Assembly Representative Jody Emerson from Eau Claire. We'll also visit with Todd Alba of the conveniently named Todd Alba Show. If you missed the last hour where we spoke about the Wisconsin connections to the new criminal indictment against former President Donald Trump, and also Congressman Mark Pocan's request for security camera footage from Congressman Derek Van Orden's recent late night tirade in the Capitol Rotunda, well, you can catch that show anytime by going to civicmedia.us. That's the Civic Media website there where you can listen to all of our shows, and you can also listen to them as a podcast, as each hour of programming is turned into a different podcast episode. You can also subscribe through Apple, Spotify, all the other distribution platforms that are out there. And you can join us live 844-967-2789 or email us radio@upnorthnewswi.com. UpNorthNewsWI.com is our website where you can sign up for our morning newsletter. This morning's edition includes a bit of a preview of the Wisconsin State Fair, which gets going tomorrow just down the road from where I am here in West Allis, and all kinds of new food and award-winning food as well. Going to give a little cough here, so let me mute while I say good morning to Aaron.
Good morning, Pat. I'm glad that even though you might not feel like it 100% of the time, you are feeling a lot better.
He said, turning his mic back on. Yes, I do feel better despite the cough. I think of it as the mass evacuation of the remaining mucus. It's like, okay, we're done. We're out of here. So feel better. The rest of it's getting out. And I really have a good prediction, a good feeling that tomorrow, being back in my own bed, back in my own home after 6 days on the road, is going to do wonders for my voice and for everything else. So again, my apologies for the sound quality, and my gratitude for everybody's patience out there.
Yeah, I think right now you're in the moment in those Mucinex ads where all the big old germs just like, I'm packing up, it's time to go. And they get in the car and drive away.
That's it. I'm out of here. Yeah, I definitely have the voice for that. So from up here on the 12th floor of this hotel downtown, I am looking out, and I can look south, and I can see 794, which is this bit of a freeway spur downtown. And I don't know if this, Aaron, has been talked about much on some of the other shows, but one of the big issues here is, should 794, which is an elevated freeway and which was initially going to be part of a broader network that was never built, so should that be torn down and turned into more of a parkway or a boulevard? And I don't know if that gets talked about on some of the other shows. I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Not the shows that I'm producing. I feel like Earl Ingram might talk about that.
I wouldn't be surprised if he did. And as somebody who has lived in Milwaukee, albeit decades ago, and knows these roads extremely well, I look at it and I completely understand the point of view of people like our friend Dan Schaefer from the recombobulation area, who has been a tireless advocate for reforming the freeway system here, which his particular one is the Stadium Freeway, which runs past American Family Field. Again, it was like a partial freeway that was built but never quite completed. And it is long past time. I completely agree with Dan on this one. It is long past time to scale that back into something more of a boulevard, and you'll get better development around American Family Field. You'll get better traffic flow than when it's a freeway and everybody's trying to speed up really quick, but then they have to slow down in pretty short order as it turns back into city streets. 794, I will admit, I'm not quite as sure about it. It feeds into the Hone Bridge, and for folks who never get to Milwaukee, you probably have seen the Hone Bridge. It's a rather iconic archway that spans where the rivers, the Milwaukee River and the Kinnickinnic flow into Lake Michigan. Anyway, I look at it and it's like, well, it seems like a pretty efficient way to get traffic through downtown. But there is example after example after example of how in recent years, communities have taken down their freeways, made them more like boulevards, and have actually enhanced the traffic flow and the usefulness of the land. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm very intrigued to see how this debate plays out, because it's not just Milwaukee. There are other communities as well. Eau Claire for many, many years debated where its bypass should go for Highway 53. So I'm hoping for the best here because it's right near the Summerfest grounds and everything else about downtown. And you want all these communities to succeed. And just because decisions were made decades ago to make room for the automobile doesn't mean that they're the right decision for the way that we get from point A to point B today. So that's my little tip of the cap to Milwaukee as I hang out here for one more day. We'll have more headlines coming up, and then State Representative Jody Emerson will join us later this hour. You're up north.
I let Mark know that we'd probably be able to get him on after weather.
Oh, I don't have the Comrex here. I didn't know we had a caller.
Oh,
Sorry.
He just hopped on. That's right, Mark from the SAC, and he's here to talk about the freeway stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
You say you're looking for someone who's never weak but always strong, to protect you and defend you, whether you are right or wrong. Someone to open each and every door, but it ain't me, babe. No, 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 it ain't me, babe.
There's Bob Dylan channeling the words of Donald Trump. It was on this day in 1962 that Robert Zimmerman dropped his name in favor of Bob Dylan, where he's been ever since. Jennifer Wojcicki is here from Weatherology to give us an update on the forecast all across the state for this middle of the week. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, well, it looks like we can expect to see highs getting into the mid to upper 80s today. Sunny skies for the southern part of the state, then a little bit more cloud cover with a chance for showers and storms developing in the afternoon for central and west central Wisconsin. A marginal risk for severe weather for those areas as well. So definitely something we'll keep you posted on throughout the day and evening hours. Mid to upper 80s primarily for Thursday, 90 around Richland Center. Sunny skies to start off the day for southern Wisconsin, then a slight chance for showers and storms developing in the afternoon hours. Chance for rain and storms throughout the day around Wausau, Wisconsin Rapids, then just a sunny day around Amory and Baldwin. Then back into the mid to low 80s, more average for this time of the year on Friday. Upper 70s, a little bit closer to Lake Michigan. Sunny skies for most, but some clouds moving in around Richland Center. And then it looks like at least a slight chance for some rain to start off the weekend on Saturday afternoon or in the evening hours, with temperatures lingering around about 80. Mid to upper 70s expected for most on Sunday, with a chance for rain for all.
Very good, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'll try to be a better conversationalist when I get my voice back. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
All righty. Jennifer Wojcicki from Weatherology. And a reminder, you can get that Up North News daily newsletter at our website, upnorthnewswi.com. Turning to sports, and then we'll get back to talking about how we get around in Wisconsin here. Bryce Durang and Joey Weimer each hit consecutive 2-run singles as part of a 4-run fourth inning as the Brewers defeated the Washington Nationals 6-4 last night to snap a 4-game losing streak and come within a half game of Cincinnati for the top of the National League Central Division. The deciding game of the series is this afternoon at noon in the nation's capital. Wade Miley will be on the mound for the Brewers. And again, we are going to give away tickets tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Brewers return home for a weekend series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so tomorrow at around 6:50, we will give away 4 tickets to Saturday evening's game. And the rules here on Civic Media radio stations are that you cannot have won a prize in the calendar month. So everything kind of reset in terms of, eligibility for prizes. And you also have to be able to use these tickets, and you have to be able to have them emailed to you. So having explained the rules, tune in for some really simple trivia, be a caller tomorrow, and maybe you could be the one to win 4 tickets to a Milwaukee Brewers baseball game. All right, I think Mark from Prairie du Sac is on and wants to talk a bit about the traffic patterns, if you will, how we get all around Wisconsin. Mark, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and it's kind of wonderful now because I grew up in far northern Wisconsin there, Douglas County. We'd go up there quite often to go hunting and that kind of thing, and it's just amazing how you just kind of buzz through everything, where you used to go through every little community up there on, like, Highway 53 especially.
Yeah.
That Cameron and Bloomer and Spooner, and that, but it kind of strikes me that with the whole freeway thing, that how it kind of killed communities in some cases, where it kind of reminded me of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it was the insane idea was to put the freeways in and get rid of public transportation in the form of the red car, which apparently Republicans have taken to heart, and they just hate anything to do with, like, trolley cars or anything like that. That any kind of public transportation, that it just is something to really consider, because some of these freeways have just kind of decimated communities. And in that movie, of course, it was getting rid of Toontown and putting the freeway in, paving over Toontown and putting the freeway over it. And the other thought I had is, with the recent indictments yesterday coming down on Donald Trump, I mean, how many of our Republicans in this state are sweating bullets right now because they were participating in the coup and went on to further it with Michael Gableman's investigation, and Robin Voss furthering that, and up until very recently, and all the other cast of characters that were involved in the Wisconsin coup with the fake electors, and Jim Trupus and Ron Johnson, the bag man, and that it's time for all these guys to face the music. Just the damage they've done to our state, and both in terms of infrastructure and to the infrastructure of our elections and trust in our elections.
Yeah, could not agree more. Mark, thanks so much. Have a great day. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Looking again at the fake electors scheme, it began with a memorandum from Kenneth Cheeseborough, an attorney who was representing the Trump campaign at the time with some of its legal challenges. And he wrote this memo in mid-November of 2020 that advocated for Trump supporters in Wisconsin to meet and cast their votes for him. And it was supposed to be a just-in-case thing, in case lawsuits found that there were election irregularities and that Trump had actually won the state. But that's not what actually happened. The Trump people did not abide by the just-in-case scenario. So instead of these being backup ballots in case actual irregularities were found, they became fraudulent ballots designed to overturn an election. And 2 of those fraudulent ballots in Wisconsin and Michigan had been delivered to the office of Senator Ron Johnson, and a request came in to Senator Johnson's office to deliver these ballots to Vice President Mike Pence on the floor of Congress, a joint session on January 6th. But thankfully, Mike Pence and a top aide said, no, we don't want any part of that. But again, just shows you just how close we came to chaos for something that Ron Johnson continued to sow doubt about the election. You had Scott Fitzgerald, who helped arrange for the fake electors to meet in the Wisconsin state capitol in December of 2020. And you had people like Tom Tiffany, who voted against the will of the voters, voting to object to the certification of legally cast ballots. And so you will hear a lot about Wisconsin as this criminal case against former President Trump moves forward. And it's going to take some time to do that. But that's sometimes how the wheels of justice turn. Not nearly as fast as some of us would like, but they are, in fact, turning. Speaking of Tom Tiffany, we kind of predicted, well, we didn't just kind of predict here. We said flat out, Tom Tiffany's not going to challenge Tammy Baldwin. And turned out we had that. Tom Tiffany announcing yesterday that making the grand announcement that he's going to run for re-election to the 7th Congressional District up north. When the actual story is Tom Tiffany is not going to challenge Tammy Baldwin for her Senate seat when she runs for a third term in 2024, adding his name to the growing list of Republicans who are not going to even try to take on the popular incumbent Democrat. They include Congressman Brian Stile and Congressman Mike Gallagher. And so now we may be left with essentially, what could be a clown show on the other side as folks in the Republican Party from the more extreme fringes, shall we say, get into the race, and without any kind of a quote unquote mainstream Republican, at least a leading candidate right now, it's quite possible that we'll have a campaign that is steeped in hyperbole and maybe even, violent rhetoric, defending Donald Trump and the January 6th insurrection. I hope not, but right now it does not look like we're going to have what you would call a traditional U.S. Senate race with a mainline Republican challenging this very mainline Democrat. Coming up in our next segment, we're going to talk to State Representative Jody Emerson about all of the pomp and circumstance and all of the ceremony and all the celebration about Janet Protasiewicz becoming Wisconsin's new Supreme Court Justice. But before we get to that, we have to acknowledge that there was another news story, quote unquote, that was out there. I mean, it's a news story, but it was just the way that it was planted and framed that is, unseemly, shall we say. And that is because Randy Koschnick, who'd been director of the state court system, had been notified by one of the progressive justices that now with progressives controlling the Wisconsin Supreme Court, he was going to lose his job. Who is Randy Koschnick? Well, he's somebody who ran against former state Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice then Shirley Abramson back in 2009. And he was then appointed by Scott Walker to other positions. He is somebody who, may have run the state courts ably, but it is hardly out of the realm of reality that after elections, when control changes, that the new people in charge want to change some of their top lieutenants. We see this all the time in the presidential cabinet. For example, when I ask, why is it always Democrats and progressives who are pressured to retain or even appoint Republicans and conservatives to high positions? President Obama for a time had 3 Republicans in his cabinet, whereas George W. Bush, 0 Democrats in 8 years. So please spare us this notion that Randy Koschnick is somehow entitled to keep a job working for people he politically opposed over the years. This goes beyond the ability to do the job, and it gets into the ability to be trusted in doing your job. And frankly, I think that Mr. Koschnick should look at the bright side of this. He now has ample spare time to possibly consider another Supreme Court race. Maybe he will challenge Ann Walsh Bradley in 2025 and try to change the conservative and liberal makeup of the court once again. So don't look at it as elections have consequences. Look at it as a potential campaign opportunity. Vice President Kamala Harris is going to be in Wisconsin tomorrow. Going to be here where I am right now in the southeastern part of the state, making a stop in Pleasant Prairie to tout broadband and affordable connectivity, then heading up to Milwaukee for some campaign receptions. The visit comes a little more than a month after the Biden administration announced that Wisconsin is going to get more than $1 billion in federal money to expand high-speed internet access. It's part of a plan to distribute $42 billion nationwide to provide reliable and affordable internet service for every home and business in the country by the year 2030. But bringing it back to Wisconsin for a second, Governor Tony Evers had planned to pair up the $1 billion in federal funds with about $750 million from the state because of the record budget surplus, so that everyone in Wisconsin could get better service faster. Republicans in the legislature cut that to zero. They cut out every dollar of the state commitment to help your community get better connections. When we come back, we'll get back to the investiture of new State Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz. We will be joined by Jody Emerson, state representative from Eau Claire, and then we'll wrap things up visiting with Todd Alba to find out what comes up on his afternoon show all across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow here in Milwaukee, but wherever you are across Wisconsin, when you're here, you're up north. We'll be back.
Any song you want for Representative Emerson?
Had I not picked out anything?
I don't believe so.
Well, sure. We could go back to that Irving Berlin one about having to get up in the morning. I don't know if you can find.
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning.
Yep. If you can find that one. It might be trick. Well, you got 4 minutes. It might be tricky to cue it up to that part because it's a movie clip. I will be right back. All right. Jody has texted, so I know she has the link, so she should be here shortly.
Pat, you are muted.
Am I muted?
No, I'm
you're good.
muted. I was stepped away for a minute. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm on camera today. Are you proud of me?
I am so proud of you. I thought it was a mistake at first, but you're here.
I'm here.
All right.
Like I texted you. I'm up.
I
I'm
know.
back, but I'm up.
Well, that's all right. Up counts.
All right,
All
10
right.
seconds.
10 seconds. Here we go.
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning. Oh, how I'd love to remain in bed. For the hardest blow of all is to hear the bugler call. You gotta get up, you gotta get up, you gotta get up this morning. Someday I'm going to murder the bugler.
I can't resist, Jody. I'm sorry. It's,
My forever song, isn't it?
I don't know that anybody has better walk-up music than you, because Jody, a dear friend, says, she'll do favors for us now and then appearing on this radio show, but always under protest because of the really early hour for people like her who aren't by your own admission, not a morning person.
Not a morning person.
Yep. So you don't want to be one of the Republicans on a committee that tries to meet at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. You're not gonna get Representative Emerson's better side. I take that back. Whenever you're actually on stage, you are, you're there. You perform,
I do my best for my constituents.
There you go.
Paid the smile or not. So.
So I wanted to, talk with someone who'd been at the swearing in ceremony in the Capitol Rotunda. It was a big moment. I mean, it's always a big moment when you get a new state Supreme Court justice, but bigger when, ideological control seems to shift one way or the other. And so, courts aren't supposed to be political. But unfortunately, this right-wing majority that we've had for 15 years has made it that way. And so we can't sugarcoat it, Jody. From a political standpoint, yesterday was a pretty happy day for people on the left side of the political spectrum.
Well, for a couple of different reasons, too. We won't get into the Trump indictment, but yeah, it was a good day yesterday. And, just over the last few months, I'm feeling a shift in Madison, too. There's a lot more excitement on the progressive side of the aisle. There's a lot more, I don't know if I should say fear or stress on the right side of the aisle. But yesterday was a great day. I love a swearing in. I love the peaceful passing of power and how we can honor different offices. And I think that's what it's about sometimes too, is, honoring the fact that it's, the highest court in our state got a new member. And it was packed yesterday, actually, to make room for all of the judges. Some of us elected officials from the state legislature were asked to, leave our row and make room for more judges. So,
there was. They described the overflow crowd was hundreds of people who
Yep.
wanted to get in there.
Yep.
So-
Yep. So then I went and watched it, from the back for a little while, and then went up to my office where I could get a better view on Wisconsin ice.
Yes, that's often how it works in these things. It's not just sports; it's politics as well.
Exactly.
But in being there, I'm sure that a lot of the discussion was about not specific cases, although they are sure to come up, but more about the issues. And of course, the two big ones are fair maps and abortion rights. And so, again, a lot of this is speculative. We're new into the term here, but what were people saying? What were people talking about whether we should expect anything in fairly short order on one of those topics or something else?
Yeah, well, we know that Josh Call already has that one case pending with the circuit court right now about abortion. And I'm sure that that's going to be making its way to the Supreme Court in its due time. I think the possibilities are endless right now, whether it's about school vouchers, whether it's about fair maps, whether it's about whatever could come up in the future. A few years ago, you would have never asked us if we would have had a case about, keeping schools open or closed, or businesses, or whatever was, happened with the courts because of the pandemic. What I'm excited about is the fact that Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is not going to run our state anymore. There's very few cases that will ever lost before the conservative court. And so the fact that we're restoring integrity to the court, and we don't exactly know how the cases are going to go now. And I'm sure that there's going to be things that, Judge Janet's going to rule on that I'm not going to agree with. I mean, there's things that Tony Evers does that I don't agree with. There's things that, people in the assembly in my own caucus do that I don't agree with. So this isn't saying that we're going to get, just our way every single time. But I think fairness and integrity is back on the court. And that's what's important about this. But it's nice to see the dawning of a new age right now. And I don't even know how long it's been since we've had a progressive Supreme Court, but
No, because I would say because prior to this current majority, things were seen much more through the prism of law rather than through the prism of politics. But now you have a court that for years has flaunted and weakened things like recusal rules, so that even though people associated with Will, the right-wing legal advocacy group, people attached to them had donated tremendous sums in some of these state Supreme Court races, and yet many times these justices either didn't recuse themselves or at least had a 100% voting record to go along with Will. Such a coincidence.
It's almost as ethical as the U.S. Supreme Court sometimes.
Yeah, right. So I would imagine that there's going to be one of the things we don't talk about because it's more, inside baseball, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this new majority take a look at the court's current ethics rules, recusal and otherwise, and probably hold themselves to a higher standard than the majority did.
I would hope so. And I hope that we can get something established, that says if this happens, then this happens. And there could be something already like that written down. I'm not a court wonk. I don't know. I couldn't, claim to know all of the ins and outs of everything that they do. But, I love the little tagline that you've got there. It's a new day with Judge Janet.
It is. It is.
I get used to the new verbiage, Justice Janet. So
Yeah, right. Now, look, along with the cases that could come up and what have you, when we get back to just democracy itself, again, this is a court. Well, the previously conservative court, it came within one vote of overturning Joe Biden's narrow win in the presidential election. If Joe Karofsky hadn't beaten Dan Kelly earlier in 2020, we might have had something completely different here. And even since then, the whole notion that there are still 2 or 3 justices on this court that would go along with some of these things, some of these notions, is somewhat disturbing. And I guess while they are likely to be outvoted now, I guess we should still look for some very sharply worded dissents and arguments.
well, there have been a few sharply worded arguments and dissents or things that have come out even recently. So the court is feeling a shift, and it's going to be some interesting language that we might see out of certain people coming up. So yeah, I think everybody grab your popcorn. It's going to be an interesting time to be a Wisconsin Supreme Court fan and checking things out. So maybe we'll have to get a Wisconsin Supreme Court blog, like there's the SCOTUS blog, to follow along with everything. So.
Just might, you never know. So we'll get to a couple of other capital matters here with Representative Jody Emerson from Eau Claire, who's joining us here on Up North News Radio. Let's start with the big one here, because there will be room on the calendar for a fall session of the legislature. Governor Evers, made his partial vetoes. He invited Republicans to try again with, a tax cut proposal, or maybe try funding things like, child care counts. I don't know that there's a lot of indication that there will be movement, but maybe I'm wrong. Again, in terms of just based on conversations that you're having down there, where should somebody put the optimism needle on something it doesn't even have to be big, but just something of substance being done in the fall where Republicans and Governor Tony Evers say, okay, we'll cooperate just a little bit more. You think there's any chance of that?
Well, we are having some really good bipartisan movement. We had a great housing package that went through earlier this summer, and that was bipartisan. It was spearheaded by a Republican, but a lot of us came along. I was proud to be the lead Democratic author on that initiative that got $500 million for us to be able to build workforce housing and remodel workforce housing around our state when we're in a housing crisis. So we're seeing some places what we are agreeing on things. I hope that there's more agreement because it is a new day in Wisconsin. I hope that I have some of my colleagues that reach across the aisle a little bit more and are willing to work with us. On the flip side, we're also seeing even more doubling down on social issues. Whether it's the anti-trans legislation that came out earlier this summer, in July. I was going to say earlier this month, but we're in August now. Sorry,
Yep.
caffeine hasn't kicked in yet, but there's horrible anti-trans legislation. We're seeing all kinds of hate around accepting our friends and neighbors for the people that they are. So
There's Nazis marching in Watertown, for goodness sakes, in Wisconsin,
and
with
legislators defending them too.
legislators, giving some kind of a wink almost at what's going on, because, well, basically just equating the two and saying, well, you can be both against Nazis and against this, but don't you to be against people for who they are,
Exactly.
in the LGBTQ community is especially disturbing.
Not
And
easy.
yeah, I mean, do we expect the anti-trans to be taken up in the fall?
Yeah, yeah. We're gearing up for that. There's already a bill about quote unquote protecting girls in sports. Well, trans girls are girls too, and they deserve to be playing in sports. And whether it's at the K-12 level or the colleges and universities level, um, you know, WIA and NCAA are not state-run entities, and they can have their own rules in place. And it's a sad day when we can't let a 10-year-old play volleyball, or a 12-year-old play volleyball on their middle school sports team. So we're seeing hateful things like that, but hopefully we're going to come together on some other things. I think childcare counts is a huge thing. I've already seen a couple of childcare centers in my district close. So we need to do what we can to make sure that people can get to work, and part of that is making sure that we've got safe, adequate childcare around our state. And then there's, other things that we've just got to take care of to keep the state fun. So hopefully we can come together a little bit and, have some good conversations and work together. But, ain't holding my breath, Pat.
No, that's a very fair point, is that we can. What I would like to see is Republicans looking at the political realities, at the new maps, and saying, I might be in a much more competitive district next year, so maybe we back off the hate bills and we talk more about job creation and economic development, which you would get through something like making childcare more accessible and affordable. But as we've noted, there are some folks in the Republican caucus who are thinking practical in terms of job creation, and others are very much culture war warriors, and that may be an impediment to progress.
And I think when you camp out in the hate lane, I don't think you can get out of there either. So that's the other piece. That's one of the things that the bad maps have done, is we've allowed very fringe people to be an elected official, whether it is in the assembly and Congress, or a previous occupant of the White House, and the fringe ideas that they come up with really make it hard to work with them. So hopefully, if we get some fair maps, it will at least have the fringe people out, because their districts aren't going to tolerate fringe ideas. and we can get to a more moderate body where we can work together on the big issues. We're always going to fight about certain things,
Oh, sure.
but can we work together to make Wisconsin a better place? Can we have good education? Can we have good business climate? Can we have roads that work, bridges that aren't falling down, things like
Yep.
that?
Here's hoping. Representative Jody Emerson from Eau Claire, thank you so much for filling us in on yesterday's festivities and the potential for progress. We'll talk to you later.
Bye, Pat.
Have a great day. Coming up next, we'll talk to Todd Alba about his weekday afternoon show here on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be back.
For the record, Pat, Crystal says all scheduling needs to go through her now. So
Well, I would have thought so anyway. I expect I have many a legislator say, "Oh, I'd like to, so just give so and so a call." So you know.
no, she's saying, and she knows you well enough to say that. She's like, nope, all scheduling needs to come through me first because you're too easy to say yes to.
Well, of course. I mean, come on, look at this. How could you not do more of this if
Exactly.
it weren't for that darn early hour? So,
I'm wearing my
all right.
T-shirt in honor of our friend Kirk. Hopefully things go well for him today. So
Oh, wonderful. Hey, thank you so much. You're such a trooper.
so take care.
All right. See
Bye.
ya. Bye.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're feeling under the weather, Pat.
I'm feeling much better. I'm still sounding very under the weather.
Very good.
You know how that can go. Oh, let's see. What all do I want to hit here?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to, just because my voice, Aaron, my voice is still so shot. I'm not going to try to stumble through that Packer sponsorship promo again.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm making an executive decision.
Testing 1, 2. Everything okay level wise?
Yep.
All right. Very good.
All right. 10 seconds.
All right.
It really seems like a month since I kissed my baby goodbye. I could have a lot of women, but I'm not like some other guy. I could find one to hold me tight, but I can never make believe it's right. 6 days on the road and I'm gonna make it home tonight.
Oh boy. 6th day on the road. I cannot wait to get back to Lake Wissota later today after 5 nights in hotels. It is time. Hotel coffee, Todd Alba. Not all it's cracked up to be.
No, it's that stuff can kill you if you're not careful.
Oh, man.
Well, are you on the? Is it true that you're a roadie for Bon Iver, like preparing for the new tour?
No,
Is
no,
that
that's
what's you on the road?
it's not even close.
All right.
I can't even imagine who I would be a roadie for. Maybe well, like Representative Emerson. There's people like that. I would roadie for them, for for Katrina Shanklin, or for Christina Shelton. There's lots of great. If they were going on like a public speaking tour, I would be a roadie for Todd Alba.
Oh, would you really? Oh, that's so kind.
Oh God, if you and Trigby Olson went on a statewide speaking tour, I'd totally be a roadie there. I'd do your mic checks, and I'd get you your guitar picks, whatever it is that a roadie does allegedly.
I was a roadie for a friend that had a band with his wife at the time, a little country band. They went regionally,
Mhm.
and and you will get this reference. Not everybody does. I tell people, they tell you part of the band. I say I'm the Reuben Kincaid. I just get in the back and say these guys are good.
Partridge Family reference, very good. Extra points there. We're just totally skewing to the youngsters, aren't we? No,
Oh, really? Yeah, the
no.
demographic just went to 75.
Yeah, right. No kidding. And Aaron, you being involved in music, you like Jackson Brown. You appreciate the lyrics in the Loadout.
I don't remember them.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
it's a great song.
All
I
right.
like Jackson Brown. I never used to be a lyrics person. When I was younger,
Really?
I was just listening to the drums and the bass, and that was basically it.
All right. Aaron has homework now to listen to the loadout,
It's a
and
great
we'll
song, and actually Jackson Brown and Kenny Chesney do a mash of that. It's a great song.
and just by what you were saying about helping a friend, when you think of roadies, somewhat related to that is pit crews for these dirt tracks all over Wisconsin. I have an uncle, Leon Plank, who raced dirt track for many, many years across Western Wisconsin and across the country. And sometimes, my dad and other buddies would help as part of, the pit crew. We
Yeah.
think of these very professional, high level folks, in Daytona and all that. And I'm taking nothing away from them, but basically it's the buddies, the men and the women who help each other out, whether they're in a band or they're a driver or what have you. That I think it's good that we call them out.
Yeah, no, you cannot be. I don't care whether you're, whether you're a any elected official. But the higher up you go, the more important it is to have a good road crew, a good staff. Whether it's the musicians we listen to, as you said, race crews, the men and women who are the name brand in front of the cameras, driving the cars, whatever it is, it's those people behind the scenes that make that person truly successful.
Oh my gosh, when I think back to my first race in 2006 and the people who, I mean, they were there either every weekend, they were at every parade or, whatever it was, for knocking on doors because they were, again, they wanted you to succeed, whether it's a band, a driver, a campaign, what have you. And so if all of this helps anybody feel better about, volunteering and helping out with something, just know anybody who does any kind of support staff, who else fits in that category?
Tell me.
The radio producers.
Yes.
Aren't they something?
They're fantastic.
I know.
We have the best, Mr. Zommers. So yeah.
I feel like Todd's like, what, or Aaron's like, wait, am I being set up? What's going on over here?
Yeah, I don't really know.
What I'm waiting for, speaking of people that help out, I really want somebody. I want the door to open behind Pat right now, and somebody, housekeeping, come in and clean the room. That'd be fantastic.
It's going to be good. Checkout time is coming pretty soon. Trust me. Well, I also didn't want to spend all of this segment, reviewing some of the things that are going to get talked about ad nauseum, but I can't help but come back to the Trump indictment, at least to say again, as I said at the top of the show, yes, this is the third indictment, but this is the big one. This is the one about, quite literally undermining democracy and trying to steal an election. This is not something to be yawned at or roll your eyes over. At least certainly that's my way of looking at it. And I sense that the Todd Alba show at 1:00 today will have a similar tact.
You are 100% correct, Pat. And are you able to join us today, or are you going to be on the road today?
I will be joining you from the. I'll be checked out of the hotel, but I'll be in the hotel. I'll be a lobby lizard here at the hotel. Yeah,
that's even better. Pat Kreitlow is a lobby lizard. That'll be
right.
fun. No, you're absolutely right. I have not gotten through the entire indictment yet. I downloaded it and yeah, Pat. I mean, as someone who was a former Republican up until 2011, to see this and to see the connection now, literally not just with the January 6th committee, but now with the Department of Justice to Wisconsin U.S. Senator Ron Johnson and his role and trying to usurp and overturn the election. And now with Trump, this one is the one that really has disturbed me the most. I don't know that any of it was necessarily surprising, but to actually see this and read it, and Keith Olbermann, who I know for some people is a little over the top, but I thought last night in his podcast, he really nailed it when he said, you know what, Jack Smith has proven in this document, or at least we believe he has the setup here to say insurrection without saying insurrection, coup without saying. He legally finessed this, so anybody with a brain who reads this knows that's what he's saying, but he made it more palatable for a grand jury, and I think easier to get an indictment by putting it down there. As a former judge, I once was in front of, not as a defendant, but
Sure.
Judge Weissman once said of Tennessee, he said, "Put it down there where the chickens can get at it." And I think that's what Jack Smith did. And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's very serious charges. But it affected me. I won't lie. It affected me when I read this yesterday because it is the most grievous in that we had a sitting president trying to usurp an election. Things that we read about in books or see in movies or see from afar around the world. But to see it happen here at home, pretty disturbing.
Yeah, again, this is not spin on an election. This is not First Amendment stuff. This is the actions that result from speaking about these things. This is not just skepticism. This is not just suspicion. It's really the absence of good faith activity by a candidate when you take that next step of trying to rig. I mean, again, I'm sure the word rig isn't in there either, but this was literally trying to rig an election. And if there are not consequences for this, I mean, Katie barred the door on what happens from
Well,
here on in.
and irony has a funny way of working out. Trygve Olsen from the Lincoln Project, who joins you and I regularly on Wednesday, will do so today, but he will be doing so from Lithuania, from the Eastern European bloc, where he has family there. And talk about a guy who knows what authoritarianism is because he's seen it up front. It's Trygve Olsen. He'll be joining us there and comparing what's happening here to what he's seen in Europe and places like Russia, where of course he is banned by Vladimir Putin himself. So the guy knows something about it. And also coming up, Doug Moe, a great columnist, great writer from the Madison area here, Madison Magazine. He'll be joining us on hour 2 on the show this afternoon. But we kick things off with our most important guest, Pat Kreitlow, at 1 o'clock.
From the lobby, from the hotel lobby.
The lobby lizard, Pat Kreitlow.
Somewhere in downtown Milwaukee. All right. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Pat.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for putting up with the gravelly voice. I hope for just one more day. We'll see you back here tomorrow, live from, oh, thank goodness, Lake Wissota. Have a great day.
That was
All
great.
right. Talk to both of you later.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, sir. I'm going to go get breakfast and rest my voice now.